This is BBC News. We'll have the headlines for you at the top of the hour, which is straight after this programme.
Hello everybody, a very warm welcome to Talking Business Weekly with me, Aaron Heslehurst. Let's go and take a look at what's on the show. Getting Germany growing again. Europe's biggest economy continues to shrink. So, what's it going to take to get it firing on all cylinders?
When we go to the supermarket, but also in the restaurant, Berlin used to be a cheap city. It's not the case anymore.
There's growing discontent on the streets as Germany continues to grapple with the switch away from cheap Russian energy, and it struggles with the investment it needs for long-term success. I'm going to be discussing all of that with these two. There they are. One of Germany's leading business groups tells me it's important that consumers start splashing the cash again and how problems abroad are hurting his members. Also, the chairwoman of the German Startup Association, herself a successful entrepreneur, tells me why a different way of thinking is needed, and it's the younger generation that are going to deliver it. Also, I catch up with the big boss of Germany's most valuable company, the software giant SAP, about why he's worried the rise of the far right could harm his country's economy, but he's still confident about the year ahead. Wherever you're joining me from around the world, once again a big hello and a warm welcome to the show. You know, this week we're taking a look at Germany. The world's fourth biggest economy is Europe's number one and probably its most influential. But last year, even though it avoided a technical recession, it was the worst performing of the G7 group of major economies. And boy, those struggles, they have many layers, but they include the move away from cheap Russian energy, reduced demand from China for all that high quality stuff the Germans make, and the long-term problems at home that critics say the government needs to do more to tackle. For most of last year, Germany's economy, it flatlined, and overall it shrank 0.3% as higher prices held back consumer spending, and its all-important exports also fell. One reason is higher prices, with energy and food certainly leading the way. Now, as you can see here, the rate at which prices rose, they fell over the course of last year, but was still 3.7% in December, although that's not as high as some other major European economies. But it's why the ECB, the European Central Bank, has been steadily increasing the cost of borrowing, because although it hits consumers and businesses' ability to spend, it should get inflation nearer to their 2% target. So, to find out how people are feeling about the impact on their daily lives, we send our very own Damien McGuinness out on the streets of Berlin.
Traditionally, Germany has relatively low cost of living and quite high wages compared to other similar countries. But there's a feeling here that things are changing. So people are feeling increasingly the squeeze. Train drivers have been on strike and farmers have been taking the streets. And when you talk to people here in Germany, many have the horrible feeling that prices are rising faster than wages.
We notice it everywhere. I mean, the rent, of course, the charges for the apartment that we pay, the electricity, for the gas, and of course when we go to the supermarket, but also in the restaurant. Berlin used to be a cheap city. It's not the case anymore.
At the supermarket, it used to be that for a 5-person family, I could do the weekly shop for well under €100. Now I spend well over that. So it's very obvious that everything's got more expensive.
I personally am doing well. I have a good job and a good wage, so it's okay. But I think in general things are going to get worse.
I think we've reached a tipping point. People are incredibly dissatisfied. I'll be very interested to see what happens in next year's elections.
But as ever, politics are at play. A recent court ruling judged that Olaf Scholz's governing coalition was breaking the law by infringing the country's tough debt rules. That means the government has to cut spending, but money has to be spent on renewing infrastructure, and the shift to green energy is certainly expensive. Now, overall, Germany has done a good job of weathering the economic crises, given how many crises are facing Germany right now. But there is nervousness. The governing coalition is seen as argumentative, and as a result, the poll ratings for the government are at a record low.
Damien McGuinness there on the streets of Berlin. Well, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, thinks there's going to be a modest improvement this year. We also asked the German government for an interview, but they declined. So here's some of what the finance minister said at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he rejected the idea that Germany's economic troubles make it the so-called sick man of Europe.
Germany is not the sick man. Germany is after a very successful period since 2012 and these years of crisis. Germany is a tired man after a short night, and the low growth expectations are partly a wake-up call. And now we have a good cup of coffee, which means structural reforms, and then we will be continuing to succeed economically.
Okay, so what needs to change for the world's fourth biggest economy to be more successful? Well, private business has a big influence. So I turn to the chief economist at the Federation of German Industries. It represents 39 industry associations, more than 100,000 companies with around 8 million employees. Dr. Klaus Gunter Deutsch, really good to have you on the show. And Klaus, let me start with this. When it comes to how businesses are feeling, Klaus, there is this closely watched survey from the Institute for Economic Research known as IFO, and it paints a rather negative picture of shrinking order books and shrinking confidence. So I've got to ask you, how much do you think that is because of what's happening in Germany versus what's happening in the rest of the world?
Unfortunately, it's a mix of both. For the corporate sector, of course, foreign demand, new orders are the key factor to watch. And this has been declining for many, many months now. And the perspective that it will improve shortly is not really there, because the resumption of demand globally will probably be slow and sluggish and take a while to occur. That's the reason why domestic factors play such a large role politically. And of course, in particular, the energy-intensive companies were expecting a larger package of support on the pricing of energy in Germany, part of which is being legislated now. But in essence, it will keep things sideways, and so the pressure on the energy-intensive sector will continue. And actually, manufacturing investment, for example, but also investment in digital technologies and electronics recorded positive growth. And so the overall numbers are somewhat shaded by the effects of high interest rates on construction and on services and consumption.
And Klaus, the latest survey of consumer sentiment doesn't look good. It shows that people are still very much worried about the cost of living. And last year, we saw German consumer spending fall. So I have to ask you, how much of a concern is there amongst businesses that the pessimism amongst consumers is just a huge drag on Europe's biggest economy?
Well, pessimism amongst consumers in Germany is a bit worse than in most parts of the world right now. This will improve, and of course by the middle of this year most people will have recovered on the purchasing power side of things, but their tendency to buy durable consumer goods, cars or new furniture is still very limited.
Well, let's talk about exports. I mean, exports traditionally been a strength for Germany. And let's be frank, I mean, you Germans, you make great top quality stuff like machinery and cars, which lead the way. And yes, the numbers still show Germany exports more than it imports, but those exports, they've been falling. So does that suggest, Klaus, that German products are just becoming, well, too expensive to compete on the global market?
Most likely not. If you look at global import volumes in the run-up until October last year, they declined by roughly 3%, and exports were very sluggish as well. So it shows that we are so globally connected that we cannot escape from global trends that are shaping in particular manufacturing. So for the medium-term outlook, the question of greatest importance is, will the US economy avoid a recession, get its soft landing done, and perform pretty well over the coming 1 or 2 years, and will China recover at some point in time from its structural problems on the property market and in manufacturing as well. And this will benefit the German economy as well, and will lead to a recovery of that sector as well.
And Klaus, let me end on this. How much concern is there that if Germany doesn't improve both confidence and growth in the economy, that it could drag down other parts of Europe and the Eurozone in particular?
We are clearly right now a small drag on growth for our neighbors, because we have this serious hit by the double crisis, or the twin shocks of the recent past, that we still have to fully absorb. But I think going forward we will improve in cyclical terms again. and we have to work very hard on the structural and supply side conditions.
Well, on that point, Dr. Klaus Gunter Deutsch, a real pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome.
As with so many countries, the future of Germany's economy is increasingly reliant on new businesses, often founded by young entrepreneurs coming along and doing well. So I caught up with the chairwoman of the German Startup Association, who has herself started several businesses, including Fox and Sheep, which is one of Germany's most popular kids app companies. Verena Pausder, a real pleasure having you on the show. And Verena, let me start with this, because when you took over at the Startup Association back in December, you said Germany is, and I quote, groaning on all levels, we need new impetus. So, Verena, I've got to ask you, just explain what you meant, and importantly, what are the changes you want to see in the economy?
I think we are like world champion in putting ourselves down. Yeah, we're the first ones to complain about our country. So I think we're really good at kind of listing all the negative stuff and where we're not good at. And I think what we're forgetting is what we actually get done. And I think what I meant with this change, also the change in mindset, is to have a mindset of, yes, we can, and to get the changes in place where we've now for years and years talked about them. It's just time to implement them now.
But Verena, how do you do that? I'm just wondering, does it take a new generation to get that mindset?
I think you need two things. You need role models or people that show you, okay, it's possible. And you need to look for the evidence that we're actually really good at the things we're doing. If you look at that, we founded 2,500 startups last year, despite these difficult times, that one of our big companies, Aleph Alpha, raised 500 million from German investors. I think if you look for the evidence that we're actually not doing too bad, then that's how you might change mindset, because people will start to believe in this country again.
Well, you've started several companies yourself, including Fox and Sheep, which is one of Germany's most popular apps for kids, and you've also invested in another 40 or so. So, Verena, I have to ask you, do you think new companies can be successful right now, given the state of the economy?
Absolutely. I think crisis times are times for entrepreneurs, because in times where capital flows like it was in 2020 and 2021, everyone theoretically can found, but you don't have to be that smart. You kind of like go with the flow. And I think it's a great time now to really think, despite an economic downturn, what are the big trends and topics that won't go away anymore? AI, deep tech, education tech, clean tech, green tech. So if you know that these are the big markets of the future, today is the best point in time to actually found that business.
Verena, we know that Germany has in recent years, it's seen some startups really take off, like the bus company Flix and the food delivery firm Gorillas. But how concerned are you that these startups, they tend to look abroad for funding, such as the COVID vaccine developer BioNTech? Does that damage, Verena, does that damage Germany and its place in the financial world?
Absolutely. I would even say that's like the biggest threat to innovation for Germany, but also for Europe, that we fund the early rounds of startups up to 50 million with European money. And then when the rounds get bigger, so for example, Flix or DeepL or Marvel Fusion, you name them, need more capital, then often that capital comes from non-European investors, and they then have a strong interest that those companies IPO at the NASDAQ and not at the German or an European stock exchange. And then we have a brain drain, we have an IP drain, and in the end, an innovation drain, because those things which were funded here at high risk in the early stage kind of get sold off once they're proven champions.
Here's a question, Verena, I want to ask you. Do you think the German government pays too much attention to the demands of traditional big industries, such as the big car and pharmaceutical companies? And by doing that, the government, in some ways, is stopping the change that's needed to reset the economy for the rest of this century. I mean, some will suggest it's an old-fashioned approach compared to, well, what some other countries are doing and embracing.
Yeah, I would strongly agree, because I mean, if you look to France and see like how Macron has made this like his topic number one, that if a startup kind of reaches a certain threshold in revenue, then he kind of celebrates it on a national level. and how he has been able to attract private capital to that sector because it is such a state topic. I think that plays a big role. And Germany especially is very much in love with their old economy. And I get it. I come from a family-run business. We just turned 300 years. So I know like what tradition means and how difficult it is also to bring companies over the years and the decades. So it's not like that it's easy, but we are generally too hardware focused in this country. And the other thing is just we're used to these big brands of the past and we want to do everything to have them in the future. And sometimes we put too much energy into kind of like conserving that what we have than to investing into the new things.
Verena, can Germany really afford to adapt to the future? Because we've seen the likes of TSMC and Intel, the huge chip makers, they're going to build massive computer chip factories in Germany. But the budget crisis that you're having, that's threatening the government subsidies that have made this pivot possible and allowed Germany to compete with other countries for these facilities. So, yeah, can Germany afford all of this?
In the past, you would have never, when talking about innovation or startups or new companies, have gone to the state and said, can you please give me money? You would have just started your own business with private capital. And then at a certain stage, maybe they would have come in because they would have said this is of national interest. Now I sometimes feel it's the other way around. And I think that's wrong, because if we look at the private money reserves that we have in Germany, we're not a poor country. And so I'm very optimistic that we can afford to be part of the future. I think we have to want to afford it.
Verena, I have to ask you, are there many people in Germany that think like you do? I mean, is it the younger generation that thinks like you do?
I definitely think that the younger generation knows that what is at stake, and that it's not a question of if we just continue the way we have been doing, it will all turn out great. We just know the problems have become more complex, the challenges have become bigger. So I would say that there is a big group of people who says, come on, let's just try more things, let's dare to be more risky, and not to the point that we kind of risk our future. But that's not at all what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of that we will actually miss out on the future because we're taking too little risks.
Verena, as we know, there's a growing number of German business leaders who are warning about the threat of right-wing extremism. How worried are you that rise could threaten Germany's economy, and why?
I'm super worried. I mean, if people don't feel welcomed in Germany, if that's the image we send to the world, like if you're not from Germany, you better think twice if you want to come. I mean, that's the worst for a nation that needs the inflow of talent. And on a society level, I mean, with our history, I want to be the last country in the world that has 20% or more of the people saying that they're fine with a party like the AfD. That just doesn't reflect how Germany is.
Well, on that point, Verena Pausder, chairwoman of the German Startup Association, a real pleasure having you on the show. Good luck with everything, and we'll check in with you soon.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Okay, computer systems, they are at the heart of everything we do these days, and of course are crucial to the innovations which are changing and growing economies. It's why the German software giant SAP pulled in more than $33 billion last year as its more than 100,000 staff. They help companies switch to the cloud and work out how to benefit from artificial intelligence. And all of that, it's good news for Germany's economy. So I decided to catch up with its big boss. Christian Klein, fabulous to have you on the show. And Christian, let me start with this, because in terms of market value, SAP is the largest German company. You're the flagship of the German digital economy. So given all of that, just explain how important is the economic recovery in Germany to your business?
Many companies actually turning to SAP, especially in macroeconomic challenging times, because you have to overcome supply chain challenges like right now. You have to build resilient supply chains with tech. You have to become more sustainable. And here our technology can help to measure carbon footprint. Or you actually have to face, productivity challenges now with the high inflation. And there are also, of course, automation, and the big topic these days, AI can help. So actually, SAP is very resilient, tech is very resilient, but of course also a well-going economy helps.
Well, hang on, Christian. In some ways, are you saying or suggesting that the German economic decline is actually benefiting SAP?
I mean, look at, for example, indeed, but look at also at the Brexit. Yeah, when a Brexit is happening, you need new technology to do logistics. You have new tax regulations. So actually, this is something where SAP and our systems can help. And now in Germany, I don't see a decline in IT budgets, Evan. What I actually see is that CEOs, business leaders, they want to invest because they see tech as an opportunity to overcome those challenges.
And Christian, as you know, the German finance minister recently said that Germany's not a sick man, but more like a tired man in need of a cup of coffee. And after the structural reforms, he says economic growth will return. Christian, do you agree with that? I mean, just how do you see the German economy moving forward in 2024?
I mean, Aaron, I don't believe that we now see suddenly, high growth in Germany. But also I remain optimistic, because what I have seen with SAP, look at us. We started our transformation 3 years ago. We shifted everything we have to the cloud. And now we have a much more resilient business model. Customers are embracing our technology to innovate. And I guess the same is now happening with the German economy. Even the German Mittelstand, I mean, they are now using the technology and to transform their business models. The German economy was also last year pretty resilient. When we talk about the energy crisis, a lot of people said we go right away into recession. And at the end, the German economy was more resilient as predicted. So I remain confident for this year and even more so for the years to come.
After a disastrous court ruling, we know that the German government has found itself short of cash to do all the things it wants. And it's already said that it'll also be the case next year. How concerned are you, Christian, that they're going to try to increase corporate taxes to plug the gaps, and then one would imagine that would damage the economy further?
No, absolutely not. That would be not good. And I also don't see any indication that they will gonna waste taxes, for companies, for the economy here in Germany. Actually, what we now need to do is actually to stimulate the economy. I actually welcome, all the financial help, companies got who are pretty energy intensive. When I now look at the German economy, I guess we are now also seeing that the export, to Asia and to the US is super important. So also there, we need to really build these bridges with technology, but also on the political sector. So, and I see a lot of positive measures here so that we can also strengthen our exports, to the rest of the world.
And Christian, we know you're amongst a growing number of German business leaders that have broken their silence on politics and warned about the threat of right-wing extremism. And the size of recent protests, they certainly show how much public support there is for that position. But just what are your concerns about the rise of the far right that could threaten Germany's economy?
Look, SAP is doing business in over 180 countries in the world. We are a truly global company and we live from diversity. Our customers are diverse. We are diverse. And when you are walking around here on the campus, actually you see a lot of people from the UK, but as well from Asia, from the United States. And we need that. We need these people also coming to Germany. So we are completely against any kind of extremism, because we need to have those talents coming to us to innovate, to boost the economy. And that's why it was time indeed to speak up, not only for myself, but for the German economy on its own.
We know AI was a big talking point this year at Davos. There was talk of regulation, but also about harnessing the technology and how that will boost businesses if used correctly. So, Christian, how important is it for Europe to lead the way in AI? Or is it already falling behind other places such as the United States?
Evan, AI is super important for Europe because when you look at the challenges what business leaders and businesses have these days, it's around high inflation. So how can I still report on earnings, an upbeat on productivity, a higher profit? Or actually when you're searching for growth, AI can help in making your offerings, your products more attractive. And also we are fighting the climate change. So what we also can do with technology is to make it, to turn companies into more sustainable enterprises. So AI is a big opportunity to overcome those challenges. And what I see also, especially with business leaders in Europe, that they want to embrace this technology. Now, in Europe, where we have to be careful is that we are not over-regulating these technologies. I'm all in for regulation, but let's not regulate the technology. Let's regulate that all of these use cases, what we are developing, are good for our society, are good for our businesses. There a framework is needed. But we cannot be too aggressive on regulating the technology firsthand.
Well, Christian, let me end on this, because the US, one of your biggest markets, how confident are you in that market, and which region or regions are you looking to expand further in the year ahead?
The US, the economy is doing well. We see, of course, we have always seen huge investments into IT and digitization, and we actually remain confident that this will also happen throughout 2024. The highest growth region, what we have in the world, is Southeast Asia. There are a lot of countries who are starting right now to invest into technology, to actually globalize their business. And so this is for us the hottest market in the world right now.
Well, on that point, Christian Klein, the big boss of SAP, a real pleasure having you on the show. Good luck with everything, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Aaron.
I should just say that the far-right, AfD, they've rejected the idea that they're bad for business. They say companies' biggest problem is higher energy costs, which have been caused by bad government policy. Well, that's it for this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, you can keep up with the latest on the global economy on the BBC News website and, of course, the smartphone app. You can also follow me on X. X me. I'll X you back. You can get me at BBC Aaron. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Hello. Cloudy, windy and mild pretty much covers Sunday's weather forecast in most parts of